Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with today's episode of Modern on a Budget. Today we will be looking at Living End, this card here. This is a deck that you will see hit 4-0 finishes and 3-1 finishes here on MTGO every now and again. Here it took 27th place on the Modern PTQ. It's actually quite high, probably went like 7-1 or 7-2 or something like that to hit this finish, just missing the top 8. You can only take a top 8 out of like 600 players. And so 27th is quite high. So it went through quite the gauntlet to get here. So it is a very competitive deck and very fun deck, and that's why I've chosen it for this week. Another reason why I've chosen it is it isn't a must. It is 3 colors. This one is particularly 4 colors, but it isn't a must to use like Verdant Catacombs. This version is using 4 of the fetch lands, but only 4 of the fetch lands. And like I said, it's one of those decks that can get by without using it. It's not Jund where it's an auto include where you have to pay $300 just for the lands. And that's kind of the decks that I'm trying to focus on. A little bit of an update on the green-white enchantments deck. I am having issues with the camera, more like issues with the person using the camera, me. I'm a noob when it comes to videotaping real-life games. The audio and video is very poor. You can't really hear us, and like I said, you can't even see the cards, so it was kind of pointless uploading the video. And also, we're still trying to find Daybreak Coronets. Wow, oh wow, you can't believe how hard it is to find this card. No one has it, and we're still proxying that, and I'd like to have the actual cards before we tape the video. Anyway, that's kind of the thanks for bearing with us. We're trying to get this issue resolved so we can have that green-white enchantments deck taped. And I'm looking forward to doing these live events, though. I think that the live video taping will be something different, something fresh, and something that will challenge me creatively. And that's what I'm looking for. Anyway, so that's a little update, and we'll get back to this deck. I'm going to be doing a lot of these type of videos to give people ideas on what they can run at Modern. We are locally here, we are really trying to promote this format. It has taken off on MTGO, but it has yet, at least locally here in the state of Utah, to become a popular format. We've been running Modern at the local game store, Epic Puzzles and Games that I play at, for the past couple weeks trying to get people, and we finally did get an 8-man Modern tournament going. But then, of course, the decks were kind of clunky, and some people were even just running their standard decks as they had no idea what to run in Modern. So this is one of the main reasons why I'm running this video series, is to give people an idea of what they can build. And this is this week's affordable Modern deck, and it's very fun too, very fun and affordable, and I'd even say competitive. So anyway, it bases around Living End. Living End is a suspend card. I think it's only about $3 too, and it's a pretty horrible card by itself. It's just suspend 3 for 4. So basically, you won't be getting this guy out until about turn 7. So by itself, bad card. What it does is each player removes all creature cards in his or her graveyard from the game, and then sacrifices all creatures he or she controls, and then puts into play all cards he or she removed this way into play. So basically, all your creature cards that were in the graveyard come into play, and all creatures in play go to the graveyard. And it works for both players. So yeah, it's a very powerful card if you can actually get it to work, and that's why these 2 cards exist, Violent Outburst and Demonic Dread. They are cascade for 3s. Basically, this deck, you cast a Violent Outburst or a Demonic Dread, and it will hit Living End. There's nothing else in your deck that it can't hit. Violent Outburst, of course, is the ideal card, as it is an instant. So what you do is at the end of your opponent's turn, you cast it, and basically that means on your turn, all of the creatures you put into play will be able to attack. If nothing else, though, you can cast it on your turn, Demonic Dread, and then you have to wait a turn and hopefully not get board wiped, or your opponent finding an answer, putting out chump blockers and whatnot for your creatures to attack. It does run only 3 of removal spell. This is quite typical. Beast Within. Why this card is so important or so popular in this deck, as you don't care about their 3/3 Beast token, as it is going to die in a couple turns with Living End. Anyway, so let's go on to the creatures. The core of the deck. I'll go back to this. Violent Outburst, Demonic Dread. They're commons, and you'll find them everywhere. These are easy to find. These are bulk commons at your local game shop, and you can buy them I bought mine all for 5 cents a piece. Beast Within is about $1. Tons of people have them. Just ask around. It's a very popular card in the last standard, and people don't really play it in Modern except in this deck. So I'm sure Beast Withins are quite easy to come by. let's go on to the creatures. The first one, your most powerful card in this deck is Street Wraith. I wouldn't advise building this deck without Street Wraith, and it can be quite costly. I think it's around $2 to $3. It could be more. Street Wraith is very, very, very important in this deck because it is your free cycler. You pay 2 life to cycle this. So you basically get a Street Wraith into the graveyard for no mana and can sift through your deck and build up your combination. You want to be able to swing for the win in 1 turn. That's the gist of this deck. And so having that cycle for free is very, very important. Now we have our 1 mana cyclers. Our 1 mana cyclers are Monstrous Carabid. It cycles through the black or a red, and again, it is just a bulk common. You'll find it everywhere for 5 cents. And Deadshot Minotaur. And again, it cycles for either red or a green, and it's just 1, and that 1 really, really matters in this deck because it is the difference between going off on turn 4 versus going off on turn 5 or 6. And yeah. So these are auto includes. The other auto include is Fulminator Mage. I highly recommend this card as it does stall, and you can chump block with it and destroy a non-basic land, so you can keep your opponent out of one of their vital colors and kind of set them back a turn. And that turn can be everything. And again, here comes good old Fulminator Mage. He's in your graveyard, and then you can cheat him in with Living End. So those, I would say, are the core of your deck, is the Street Wraith, the Monstrous Carabids, Fulminator Mage, and Deadshot Minotaur. Then you have a bunch of options. You have a bunch of cyclers, and even you do have some evoke cards as well from the other block. So let's just go to the list here. This guy's using Architects of Will. This isn't a very common card used in this deck, as it is only able to cycle for black. So only one of your colors can cycle for it. I don't really, yeah, like I said, you don't usually see this card in most of the Living End versions. Then there's Avalanche Riders. This is usually a sideboard because it does cost 4 and it destroys another land. But the good thing about this is you can have this like land destruction package with Fulminator Mage and Avalanche Riders. But having no other way to get this in the graveyard but hard casting it, letting it die the next turn, and then living ending it is, yeah, I don't know about mainboarding this. I think it's more of a sideboard card against kind of clunky 4-colored or like Tron decks. Then he comes in, and then you could even use more than just 2 because he's a very powerful Fulminator Mage. So we talked about these guys. Then there's Jungle Weaver. This is another one that is an option. It cycles for 2, and big 5/6 reacher. He's a good beater. Then we have Pale Recluse. This is another one that is okay. It's a forest cycling. Forest cycling is kind of cool because you can go get like a Stomping Grounds or whatnot. So it kind of acts as your fetch land. Pale Recluse is definitely an option. A lot of people don't use it because they don't want to use a Temple Garden. They just want to stick to 3 colors and be able to cast it if they have to, and that's why Architect of Will isn't used and Pale Recluse isn't used. And your other option is Valet Renette, or however you say this card, which is a Mountain Cycler, Forest Cycler for 2. I think there also is a couple other cards. I'm trying to think what they are. I think there is another Forest Cycler, Mountain Cycler for 2 that some decks use, but it is evading me at the moment. But basically, just use a combination of this to get enough creatures in the graveyard and then be able to swing for the win with Living End. Hopefully on a Violent Outburst, not a Demonic Dread. But we are, of course, using Demonic Dread as it gives another way to get the Living End. So on the sideboard, of course, is wide open, as there are tons of cards that you can use specifically to hate out other decks. You could use cards such as Ensnaring Bridge for any sort of aggressive deck. Ensnaring Bridge is that creatures can attack you for less cards than you have in your hand. This deck can actually get rid of cards in hand quite easily, and then they can attack you. You have, like here, Damping Matrix. Damping Matrix is the non-whites version of Stony Silence. Other than it does affect creatures as well, but it prevents your opponent's artifacts from, decks like Eggs or Tron. Other than it doesn't really shut down Tron a lot of times because a lot of those abilities are mana abilities that they're activating. But it shuts down a lot of decks. Shuts down like Affinity a lot of times when they can't equip their equipments to their dudes. So very, very, very powerful card, Damping Matrix. Usually the sideboards that are included in this deck though is definitely Ignot Chewer. Ignot Chewer Evoke for one is awesome in its artifact decks, and it gets a 3/3 in your graveyard quite easily too. So you destroy an artifact and get a creature in your graveyard for Living End. So it's a great card. Another one, Shriekmaw is usually a very popular very popular card in this deck as well, as you can evoke it for 2. So Terror, it has Terror for, you evoke the Terror and then you get Shriekmaw back. The only problem with Shriekmaw with Living End is if they don't have a creature that's coming back from the graveyard, you have to kill one of your own dudes because it's a must, not a may. So that's kind of the problem with Shriekmaw. Good thing about Shriekmaw too though, it does have fear, and so it can get through any blockers that your opponent may get back from Living End. Plus, it does kill any blockers that come back from Living End your opponent may have. So, good card. I've seen these actually main decked. I've seen these actually main decked as well. But again, they're a little clunky if your opponent doesn't have an artifact. This particular version is using Obstinate Baloth for the aggro and Brindlebore. Brindlebore is another good one because it's got the sacrifice Brindlebore, you gain 4 life built into it. So it's another way you can get a creature into your graveyard and kind of stall. 4 life's pretty powerful. Baloth doesn't have that ability, but if Liliana's going around, Baloth is just a very powerful card on its own. And the other one is, this one actually, you see this quite frequently as well in main decks. I kind of like this over like Architects of Will and whatnot, as you can exile their cards, their creature cards in their graveyard that you end up killing. So you could even have like a Shriekmaw, Fairy McCaber combo in your main deck and be able to destroy their creatures and exile them so they're not getting them back when you do cast Living End. I do like this card a lot. I don't know how much Fairy McCaber goes for. This is bulk rare. This is a common. You can still get Obstinate Baloth for quite cheap, like bulk rare, I think. Common. This is a common, but I don't know how much it costs. I think I've been trying to find these in bulk bins and I can't. And Shriekmaw's actually, I think, like $1 or $2. I'm not quite sure, as it is just an uncommon. So you should be able to find it. So again, the whole core of this deck is mostly commons and uncommons, and then you have your choice of lands that you use. And this particular version uses 4 Blackcleave Clips and 3 Copperline Gorges. These are both quite cheap right now. And then one of Blood Crypt, one of Stomping Grounds, one of Temple Garden, because it does use the Pale Recluse version. You don't have to use the Temple Garden if you're not using Pale Recluse. You can just stick to one of Stomping Ground, one of Blood Crypt that your Mountain Cycler will go get. So anyway, and Overgrown Tomb. Not a very pricey deck. Very, very affordable. Pretty good. Very fun, though. It is so fun when this deck goes off. It is a combo deck, and usually I bitch about combo decks because they aren't fun to play, and they're not fun to play against. This one does have a little more interaction than your average combo deck, as you do have a lot of decisions to make, especially when the sideboard comes in. So, yep, this is this deck. This is Living End for today's episode of Modern on a Budget. I'll try to get this deck built as soon as possible, just missing a few cards here, and I'll tape this live as well, as I do not want to build this deck on MTGO. This is Kevin from RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.